Josh Einiger of our station, WABC-TV here in New York, Channel 7. Of course, that team doing extraordinary work trying to cover this day in and day out as well. Josh, you were in the courtroom. Describe the moment the jurors walked in and the former president's reaction to that verdict.
Yeah, so David, it's hard to overstate the wild shifts in the atmosphere in that courtroom over the course of really just a few minutes. I'll actually start a few minutes before that, which is when the judge called all the parties back to the courtroom at around 4:15. The jury was to deliberate until 4:30, and the judge told both sides he was going to let the jury go at 4:30, and then he left the bench. And over the next few minutes, Donald Trump was positively giddy with laughter with his lead attorney, Todd Blanche. They were laughing pretty heavily at the defense table and really all smiles. They seemed very relaxed. And it was really only a few minutes after that that the jury sent this note saying they had a verdict. So when they did enter, I think you heard Olivia Rubin say earlier, they walked in a very well-practiced, eyes down, eyes forward, not looking at the former president, who was really just maybe a foot or two to their right as they have to file past him, and they got into the witness box. And then what I'll tell you is that from where we were sitting, David, we're not able to see his face. We can only see the back of his head, so it's hard to know what expression was on his face. But as they started to read through the counts, count 1, guilty, count 2, guilty. There was no motion at all in his body until they got to count 4, at which point he slowly started to shake his head. And that lasted for a few more counts, and then at around count 6 or 7, he was just still again, all the way through to count 34, when he was found guilty on all counts, David.
Any reaction were you able to see from Eric Trump, his son? Was his son still in the courtroom at that point?
His son, Eric, was in the courtroom sitting next to one of his attorneys, and no obvious reaction from him either. He was looking straight ahead, sort of ramrod straight, and did not betray any emotion. And then I will tell you, David, that when the jury did file out, it was that same awkward staging in the room that we've talked about so many times. They walked out now with him on their left. Some of the jurors actually turned their face to the right in the direction of the judge and away from the direction of Trump so that they would not have to make eye contact with him as they filed out of the room. And then when he left the room a few minutes after that, there was just a look of disgust. I have no other real word for it on his face as he walked out of the room, and then you saw him before the cameras after that.
We're looking at the SUV carrying the former president back up to Trump Tower here in Manhattan. And Josh, the moments after the verdict was delivered, we understand that each juror was then polled right there with the former president sitting at the defense table, each juror polled by the judge. And how did that play out? And I know you were sitting behind the president, very hard to tell his facial expression, but describe for me, if you will, that moment, and then what the judge then said to those jurors after their job was done.
So when the judge polled the jurors, he didn't poll them on each count. Of course, there are 34 counts, there are 12 jurors. He basically went through juror 1, is this your verdict? Juror 1 said yes, juror 2, juror 3. And during that time, Trump did turn in his chair and he was looking off in the direction of the jurors. No obvious expression on his face. It seemed fairly impassive. And then, at the end, the judge did thank these jurors for their service. He told them, I don't have a direct quote in front of me, but he told them how difficult this trial has been, how stressful this trial has been for them. He thanked them for their service, and he excused them from the room. And then he asked them if it would be okay if after he excused them from the room, he would then go to them to have a conversation with them and thank them personally, one-on-one. And that was when they rose from the jury box. Everyone rose, including the former president, and then they filed out of the room, taking great pains not to look in his direction.
That's a very interesting observation, and I had wondered earlier when I had reported earlier on the air here that the judge told those jurors that he would be interested in their feedback, thanked them for what was a very difficult task, when that communication might take place between the jurors and the judge. Josh Einiger here of WABC reporting that the judge then planned on meeting with those jurors after they left the courtroom. And you have have to wonder, Josh, and it's an impossible question to answer, you have to wonder if the foreperson or perhaps the two attorneys within the jury or who it was on that jury that got them all together and said, when we walk in, let's walk in a certain way, because your description and Olivia Rubin's description earlier on the air, really match up to a T. The decorum, the way they carried themselves, regardless of what you believe about this case, how they carry themselves is something that we can all observe and certainly appreciate, at least in their behavior. I know there are going to be a lot of opinions on the outcome of this trial, but to have walked in and to be concerted in their effort to sort of look down, not bring any more emotion or drama to a case that's already has historic implications here.
David, it's hard to know, of course, as you point out, what the impetus was behind all of that. Part of it really could simply be that it was just uncomfortable for them. Here they are in this incredibly weighty position. The fate of the former leader of the free world is in their hands. And he's a pretty imposing figure, especially when he stands. So part of it could simply be that kind of intimidation factor, or maybe an attempt not to allow themselves to be intimidated by that, type of stature, standing, that presence just to their right as they walk in or their left as they walk out. It was, though, as you point out, David, I mean, there were two attorneys on this jury. There were quite a few people with advanced degrees. So, there are people with life experience and wisdom, perhaps, who could guide the whole jury in terms of how it comports itself during this really historic and very stressful trial.
Josh Einiger of WABC-TV.